Hi, my name is Giselle Thompson, and welcome to the Live the Life You Want speaker series. The goal here is to help you learn practical ideas and strategies that will help you overcome adversity, be happy, and live the life of your dreams. The reason I wanted to do this series is myself. I had been going through some difficult times several years ago and kind of got really stuck. And I was able to reach out to other ideas, some friends pointing me in the direction of some other ideas, and that just led from one thing to the other, which helped me move closer to living the life that I meant to live, that's part of my purpose, and to be happy. So this is why I'm doing the series. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Alessandra Wall. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you here too. Dr. Alessandra Wall, she's a clinical psychologist, a life coach, speaker, podcaster, and the founder of Life in Focus. She spent the last 15 years of her life helping people restore balance, regain control, and rediscover what it means to live a life that's right for them. She's running 2 businesses. She's mom, a wife, a chair of a board of a charter school that she helped found. She does parkour, which I found out just a few minutes ago what it is, and I'll invite Dr. Wall to tell you about it. And she's just very busy, but she's focused, and she's living a life that is truly inspiring for her. So thanks, Dr. Wall.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about parkour, and then I'll tell everybody why I wanted to interview you.
Sure. Okay, so the sexy, glamorous version of parkour are the chase scenes that you see in all the James Bourne's movies and Mission Impossible movies, right? That's the sexy, glamorous. That's what we all think we're doing. Parkour, somebody like me who picked it up at basically age 38, is about learning how to get from point A to point B in the most efficient manner, which includes things like learning how to vault over walls, climb taller walls, jump down, jump from one railing to another. So it's all the things that kids do in a playground naturally, except I get to do it as an adult.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I love it.
It is tons of fun.
And the reason I wanted to interview you, Alessandra, was because what I really liked about what I found about you when I found your website is it's about trusting yourself. And instead of relying on others to figure out what you should or shouldn't do with your life, just to rely on what you feel inside is important for you. And it really resonated with me, this idea that you believe with every fiber of your being that you have one life to live and that there's so much more we can do than just getting by. And I thought, you know what, this is the lady, this person has something important to share with the listeners today about what I said about living the life that you want and living the life of your dreams. So that's what drew me to you.
Yeah. I grew up like many people doing a lot of the right things. So I was a good student. I was a good daughter. When I broke rules, which I did break rules, my mother would say I was very good at never putting her in a position of having to worry, meaning she didn't find out about the stuff until I was well in my 20s. And she didn't find out about the things I did in my 20s until I was well into my 30s. And so like many people I kind of decided in my 20s that I was going to do something. And then I pursued that path reflexively without thinking about how I was changing as an individual or whether the choices I was making were right for me. They were just the right choices. They were the things I was told I should do, could do, the things I knew I was good at. And somewhere in my mid-30s, I realized that I had achieved everything I'd set out to do and that life was just not as amazing, or I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I should be. And that spurred this whole reconsideration of where I was and this realization that I'd been spending much of my life doing what was right and not enough of my life thinking about whether the things that were right for me. And as you mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist. And I came to think that if that was a big thing for me to realize and to gain insight in, as somebody who spends her life kind of teaching people to be insightful, then it was something other people probably struggled with. And it is. I mean, I find it all the time, just people who feel very lost, who, when you ask them questions like, what makes you happy, get incredibly anxious because they realize as adults that they can't answer those questions. So I made it part of my mission, one, to teach people to make that distinction between what's right and what's right for them. Two, to accept that being an adult does not mean that you have to give up on your dreams, but we are still pragmatic. And so the way we dream and the way we achieve our dreams is different than maybe what we thought we could do in our teens and 20s. And three is to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, slowing down is so important. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that too. You have some thoughts about that. So I'm going to dive into my first question. So the focus that we discussed for this interview is really about making the dream real now, before you have everything you think you need. And I just love that. It's important that you don't have to postpone the dreaming. You can start right now with the little things. And this is what you're going to share with the listeners today about how to do that.
Yeah. So, as I said, a lot of us have spent countless hours in our teens and 20s thinking about what we wanted to be when we grew up, what kind of things we believe we could achieve. And then the reality of adulthood is just that very soon we start reacting to what life throws our way. Bills and job offers and partners and children. And there comes this point in adulthood where dreaming is perceived as this really childish thing, or naive, or unrealistic. I think it's a pity. I called it a fallacy of adulthood, that the dream cannot be achieved, right? I think what happens is when people only picture their dreams in these ideal versions, the ones that come up in your early adulthood, and they realize they can't achieve those dreams, they think that it means that those dreams can never, ever, ever be attained in any way, that you can't tap into them. But as a psychologist, one of the things I spend a lot of time doing is helping people look at situations or look at contexts in a much broader manner. So instead of just looking at a situation for what it means on the surface, we look at what themes are being brought up by an event, right? And I realized that if you apply that same logic to dreams, there is a way for every single person out there to reach your dreams. And there is what I call a real world expression of your dream that's attainable, possible, and reasonable. And that's where the right for you comes in versus just doing something that's right or just doing something that's a little too crazy and idealistic. And all it takes is being able, first of all, to get back into that mindset of daydreaming and allowing yourself as an adult to all the things you wish you could do, all the things you would like to achieve, and then understanding what needs are being met by those dreams and finding a way to achieve that in the real world. And it all sounds super theoretical right now, but I've got an example that I use quite frequently with people to help explain it. So you can tell me when you want me to give the example, but I don't know if you have any questions about that.
I think it's coming up. What practical ideas or strategies do you recommend to help listeners figure out how to go after what they want?
Sure. So this is something I would recommend if you're listening. Re-listen to this later, or if you want, just grab a sheet of paper and right now take a few seconds and think about 3 things that you would do or change about your life if you had unlimited time, unlimited means, or no responsibilities. Right? These things we dream of doing that we know are probably completely unattainable. And when I think of that, one of the things I dream of having is my own apartment. Now, I have a beautiful home. I'm from my home office right now, so I'm facing my home. I have a beautiful home. I have 2 boys that I love, a husband whom I love most. I love all the time. I like most of the time. And it's not that I don't want to live with them. I want an extra apartment of my own, right? This is my dream. If I won the lottery tomorrow, this is one of the things I would do. I would buy a beautiful small apartment and I would furnish it the way I want. And I would have a huge library of books and a beautiful chair so I could sit down and read and have peace and quiet. And as a mother, I know you understand how precious that becomes, right? So that's the dream. It's super sexy because, by the way, my apartment is this beautiful Parisian apartment with high ceilings and crown molding and whatever. The reality is that I have 2 businesses, 2 children, and more pets than I can count on one hand, a husband, friends, responsibilities, and my money is being put towards retirement and building my businesses and cannot be put into buying an apartment, right? So the dream as it is unattainable. And if you look at the dreams on your sheet, if you've done this, if you've written, probably many of them are as written down unattainable. But if I take a step back and I ask myself, what is it about having my own apartment that makes me have this kind of grin, which I like to call the perma grin. Like, it's silly. I swear when I think about it, I just like, it has that silly,
Yeah, I see it right now.
Very natural perma grin, right? It's a couple things. It's like, one, it would be my own space. A space where I don't have to deal with anybody else's mess. It could be decorated the way I want. It would be clean. It would be quiet. I could listen to my music without anybody complaining. I love listening to like jazz, like old school jazz. And I'd get to read for hours. This has to be one of my favorite things to do, uninterrupted. And if I look at those, what I realize is it's not so much that I want or need an apartment to be fulfilled, although that would be fantastic. But the need that would be really fulfilled by that, what makes me grin is the idea of solitude, a space of my own, and like quiet. This is really, really, really important to me. I think it was always important. I just had more access to it. The older I get, or the louder my children get, the more I realize I really crave quiet. And so if I understand those needs, I can look at my life as it exists with its financial, time, obligation constraints and say, what are the ways in which I can today, given the realities of my life, start to tap into those needs? And usually when I talk about this to people, I say, well, there are a multitude of ways I can achieve that dream. So one is the apartment, not really realistic right now. The other thing, super expensive still, is I could go on a 1-week solitude, quiet retreat kind of thing. The kind that they do in the deserts or in the forests. But that's also really expensive, and it's difficult, again, as a parent and as a business owner, to take a week away from everything. Another way in which I could achieve this dream is, I'm going to go into more and more realistic, would be to maybe rent some space in an apartment someplace, or in an Airbnb for a weekend, and go get a weekend to myself. Still difficult, but if you pay attention, I've gone from something completely unrealistic to something much more feasible. The other thing I realized, we were talking before about the paint in this room and how I just recently repainted this office. Well, I didn't have access to this office while it was being repainted. And one of the things I realized is that this office space is just my space. It's nobody else's space. And the reality of it is, this is my apartment. This is the real world expression of my apartment. It is a space where when I need to, I can come and hide myself and be left alone for the most part. It is a space that is all my own. And once I get a comfortable chair, I can maybe even come and read. But let's say you don't even have this space. We still identify that the needs are solitude, my own private spot, and quiet. I can achieve those things by taking breaks during my day, during my work day, spending an extra 5 or 10 minutes in my car before I get out to go to my office or come back here, making a point in the evening when I turn off the lights before going to bed to just sit in my living room alone. I'm usually the last person to go to bed in the house, and enjoy those moments. So none of the things I mentioned, again, is quite as exciting as the initial ideal dream. But by understanding what needs can be fulfilled by your dreams, and by looking at the realities of your life, constraints and opportunities put together, there are ways of identifying real world expressions. And honestly, both for myself and with everybody I've worked with, it's incredible how fulfilling it is to tap into those needs, even if you're not tapping into them through that ideal vision, through that ideal dream.
I felt very drawn into your example, and I could extrapolate to experiences in my own life. For example, my husband and I, we really just like being in each other's company all the time. And like, our kids give us a hard time, but we're just comfortable that way. But it's hard to do that when you work and you have kids. And so we're now like, okay, how can we make this happen where there's nobody around? So now we're like, okay, we look at our calendar, we try to plan out, we've just started doing this, so it's promising. We look at the calendar for the next 3 months. Okay, which day, one day, 4 hours while the kids are in school, can we just not have anybody around? Kind of like a little bit what you're describing. Mm-hmm. But nobody around, nobody knocking on the door. Mom, I need this. I need milk. She so-and-so is bugging me. No bills. No nothing. Just floating time. Like I call it, like when I was young, I consider myself a floater when I was young, just kind of. And I think you've described it a little bit differently when we were talking earlier. And I think you'll talk about that too. But just this being, just being in the space with no expectation, no thoughts, no goals, no, just floating, And so I have some things to work on to be more present. So we're going to try again in May. Because, I have to go to an appointment for the daughter. Or I have to go do this thing. And the next thing you know, that's like 2 hours left and I fell asleep. So that's not fair. So we're going to try again.
It's practice, right?
Yeah.
It's all about practice.
But there's no way we can take a week, even a weekend. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Because you have responsibilities. But 4 hours in a day, come on. We can find 4 hours in a day. Yeah.
It's something that I do with everybody I work with. It's part of, at least in the coaching process, it's where we start. We talk about what somebody's ideal life would look like, what kind of life they wish based on their perspective at this time. So let's say this time is 30. Knowing that when you're 40, that ideal life, that same narrative is going to look very different. Mm-hmm. And when you're 50, it's going to look different. It's important to realize as adults, we evolve. And so it's crazy to think that what we need in our 20s is what we're going to want or need in our 50s. Mm-hmm. Which is why this process needs to be repeated over time so you can stay in touch with yourself. That's how you avoid the dreaded midlife crisis, right? Is by continuing to realize that you evolve, by taking the time to ask yourself on a reasonably frequent basis, how am I doing? Am I fulfilled by my life? And fulfilled doesn't mean happy. Life sucks sometimes. Life is miserable. Life can't be, rosy and good all the time. And being married, for example, there are days you absolutely feel incredibly fortunate to have the person in your life, and other times where you feel shackled down by their presence. And that's just the reality of life. Mm-hmm. By forcing yourself to ask a simple question, which is, am I satisfied with my life? I'm like truly deeply satisfied. And if I could have anything I wanted, what would I do? And am I reaching for those things in whatever way is available to me now?
Yeah.
you end up living a life that's this term I keep on putting out, that's right for you, such that when you look back,
Yeah.
you're not going to one day wake up and go, holy crap, what did I do with my life? Or I can't believe I missed on this opportunity, because you will have stayed current with what you need. So it's, as I said, an exercise I do all the time. And to use an example that might be more relevant to some people, I recently worked with a young woman who is very successful at her job and career, but kind of miserably successful. And we talked about what she ideally wants to do, which would be to chuck her very successful job, to start traveling and writing and be a health coach. And when we talked about what she would get out of those things, one thing that really surprised her was to actually realize that a lot of the things she would be getting out of that dream life, already getting now. And immediately her satisfaction went up, because she was only looking at the dream and saying, I don't have the dream, therefore I'm unhappy. And then when she realized what the dream was about, she's like, oh, wait, I've actually done a really good job. And then the second thing she did is we looked at, well, what's missing? And we slowly started incorporating it. And the first thing she did, which she could totally do with her job, was to start blogging for a traveling, like a website that specifically caters travelers under 30. And so she started writing blog posts about healthy eating and health habits while traveling for people under 30. Right? So that's a real world expression of this dream she had. And actually, as of today, she is now on that path full time. So she has quit her job.
Yay.
But I don't think she would have quit her job without taking those small steps first. Right? And without that certainty that she knew what she was going after.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something that I don't think we really talked about it in preparation, but if I could ask you to extrapolate on it a little bit, that transitioning, like like for example, like your example, in my case, I love writing. I'm in my happy place when I'm reading and writing. I'm absorbing, like when I relax, I'm absorbing content. And then when my brain is full, I'm happy. It is what it is. I love it. I study for fun. Okay, that's me. But I've embraced it now, right?
Right.
And I'm in my happy place when I'm reading and writing, and I'd like to write fiction. I'd like to do poetry, but I can't feed my family with that. So then I thought, well, what kind of topic could I blog about? So this project, right? Like the Live the Life You Want series is an offshoot of the blog Beyond the Injury. And, but that's been a 3-year process. So you talked about that example where she started small and now she just went live, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, she gave her notice, and she's getting certified for the health coaching stuff and taking a business course so she can learn how to apply. I mean, but I can guarantee you that when we started, she's like, I don't know that I can do that. I don't know that I can do that. Because she wasn't ready. That's
right. And so that it's sometimes I'm wondering, like, cause I'm not on the other side of it, but maybe you are, is that transition time in a lot of ways, it's important and it's validating and makes you feel great, but it's almost like you have to be extra patient with it, because you're not living two lives, but you're not cutting yourself in half, but you're stretched a little bit thin.
Yeah.
Want to go towards something else while you're letting something else go, and it can't always happen overnight because you have obligations. So what has been your observation or your suggestions to help people be patient and stay in the moment with that transition, even if it can take 2 to 3 to 4 years?
Sure. So coming back to that concept of right for you, for some people like you and me, because that's the way I approach my coaching business, my guess is you and I are fairly similar. So we're probably very pragmatic, hyper responsible people. And there's one path, which is to say, screw it. I am just going to go ahead and take a hiatus from what I'm doing and pursue the dream. And I'm going to go 100% into it. And for some people, that is absolutely the right approach. right?
Right.
It is what they need to do to give it a try. And maybe they have the freedom, financial, time, burden, responsibility, whatever, to do that. For a lot of people who are parents, that freedom just isn't there. The responsibility to clothe, feed, and protect your children is such that, just taking that risk is not what you can do. That's actually what I did to build my therapy business. I left my other job. I'm like, let's go, let's make this work. and took a loan and worked out. By the time I was opening the coaching business, I'm a parent. I cannot do that.
Okay.
So for other people, it's going to be this process. And again, if you're one of those people, it's about keeping in mind that even in the small steps you're taking, you are fulfilling that need. And so those small steps should be incredibly satisfying. The other thing to remember is a lot of us look at the people who've already achieved the things we want, and we forget that those people have taken years to get where they got. Right? The Ariana Huffingtons, I can't think of them right now.
Yeah,
business names with Seth Godin and all those people.
Like exactly. A lot of them.
They didn't suddenly do what they were doing, or James Altucher. They slowly approximated things, and there's an advantage in slowly approximating things, which is that you learn what is right and not right for you. So you might approach something in one vein and realize, I thought that this real world expression was the right way to tap into that need.
Okay.
And then you look at it and you're like, yeah, now that I've tried it, that doesn't quite work. And that's maybe just as important as the other messages we're sharing today is figuring out what's right for you. Figuring out what's going to fulfill you is not a one-shot process. It takes a lot of trial and error and practice. And the error part of that practice is not failure, and it's not wasted time. Right? So every time I've tried something and it hasn't worked out for me, I did not waste my time trying that. I learned something really important. And had I not tried, I wouldn't have known. Therefore, it was an essential part of the process of figuring out what's right for me.
And you wouldn't have that error and what you learn from the detour to tap into as experience later on when you don't even know that you need it, but that it can short circuit. It can help speed up something that you're learning later because of that detour. And
part of the reason this is so incredibly important, and might be more important than people realize, is simply this: people get really, really, really discouraged and terrified by the idea that they have to get it right, that they have to be certain that the choices they're making are going to pan out for them and that they're going to be successful. And I know you and I talked about, this will lead into the next question, about roadblocks.
Yes.
Like, what are some of the roadblocks people run into? Well, one of the biggest roadblocks we run into is fear. Fear of failure, fear of making a mistake, fear of regret, fear of success, right? So fear of change. But fear is a huge roadblock. And when we believe that we have to know that the outcome of something is right or correct, that paralyzes us, right? Because the truth is, there's absolutely no certainty. Any choice I make, I cannot be certain of the outcome. And then I realized even hindsight doesn't give you any certainty, because hindsight only tells you what the outcome of the choice you made was. It tells you nothing about what would have happened if you'd made any one of the other infinite potential choices that are out there, right? So one thing to remember, one of the beautiful parts about the process of figuring out what's right for you is that the process is normal. Like, I don't know a single person who can say today, I know exactly what's going to make me happy, and this thing that I know today is going to be true for the rest of my life, right? And if you can free yourself from that pressure, if you can realize that you don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to have a direction. You do need a focus. And that focus has to be based on personal insight, not on what your parents, your spouse, your friends, your Facebook feed, or some guru tells you is right for you. Right? That it's normal to make mistakes, that it's normal for there to be shifts, and that there is absolutely no situation in which you will gain full certainty about your choice. If you can let go of that, if you can embrace the fact that there will always be uncertainty, then you're actually getting past one of the biggest roadblocks to taking action, to being happy, to living the dream, to feeling confident. I mean, it taps into so many things.
So I'm understanding fear. I'm understanding a need for certainty when it's just not possible. And to deal with those things, embrace that there's uncertainty, that you're not going to have all the answers, but that you'll hear from within yourself if you're kind of nudging along on the right path. Have a focus, and then that should help deal with the fear.
Yeah. There's a brilliant man, let's say 19th, 20th century philosopher named Jiddu Krishnamurti, who said, fear is uncertainty in search of security. And his whole point was fear comes up anytime we pursue security, and that we pursue it through wanting to have certainty about something. And anytime we grasp for certainty, we end up getting really scared. We start feeling helpless, which is what triggers the fear, because certainty is unattainable. And one thing that comes up time and time again when I work with people, and now this both as a psychologist and as a coach, is people's constant worry and replaying in their head of, am I making the right decision? Am I making the right choice? Am I going to regret it? What if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if people disapprove? What if it's a mistake? What if I regret it 20 years from now? Right? And that is a huge roadblock. It holds us back. So if we start from using the exercise that I talked about in the beginning, where you look at all the things you dream of, and you take the time, people, it's going to be really fast. For others, it's going to take them a while, to ask yourself, what is it about those dreams that gives me the permagrin, right? What is it about that stuff that just seems so amazing to me? And you start identifying your needs. Then you're really on the right track. That is your focus, because as long as you're trying to meet your needs through your choices, you know that even if you make a mistake, you're going to look back and go, yeah, that wasn't quite right, but it felt good. I learned something, and it fed something in me, right? It fulfilled something in me to approach it and try it that way. And I think that is really the way we end up living a life without regrets, which is not the same thing as a life without failure or without mistakes.
And sometimes the regret is not doing anything.
Absolutely. I mean, more times than not. And the more I work with people in their 50s and in their 60s, I see that. It's this, I knew I should have, I could have. And I'm like, that's a little harsh, because at the time you probably didn't make a choice for a good reason. And now what I'm seeing with the millennial generation is a lot of them fear experiencing that regret that they're seeing in their parents. But they're paralyzed on both ends.
I see. And, I know what you mean, because I remember there are a lot of things I wanted to do in my 20s and do them, same thing with the 30s. And I hit 40, I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't pick one thing because I have a lot of different interests, and I was trying to focus on one, but I didn't pick any. In the end, I didn't do anything. And so I remember, like, when I get to 50, and I said this to myself at 40, when I get to 50, I better not be having the same conversation. So I'll pick something, and if it's several things, then I'll do those several things. At least when I'm 50, I can have that conversation that something got done, especially the writing. The writing, I was putting it off, working this and all this, and am I good enough, and can I do it? And nope, dusted it all off. But I'm a reader, so I read lots and lots of books about it. But that's how I I make my world feel secure. You know, if it's all up here in my head, then I feel more certain about what I'm doing. You know, like you described earlier, there are those who can just dive in. That's not me. I'll dive in with lots of information and books and ideas and thoughts in my head. But I wanted to get back to what you were saying about purpose or focus. And I was going to ask you about, you know, how do people get focused? And then you brought it back to the beginning and you explained it again so I could see the full loop. And it made me think of, you know, those metal detectors, you know, when you go on the beach or in the woods, you know, it made me think of that when you're talking about your permagrin. What's that thing that makes you permanently smile?
Yeah.
And that's the metal that the metal detector's trying to find. And so you might go off course a little bit here, a little bit there, but because you're listening to yourself and you're tuning into yourself, you're hearing that little beep, beep, beep sounds that you're on, you're going to find metal soon again. So is it a question of having a purpose focus of, I know I'm going to go from, you know, Canada, Ottawa, where I live, to France, and then Japan, and then Australia. Like, I don't need to know that I'm going to go to those 4 different locations in that order. Right? But I know what would make me happy. My ultimate dream is to travel anywhere with any whom in my family, any when, anywhere, anyhow. So it doesn't matter where I go, doesn't matter when I go, as long as the resources are available for me to bring my family where I want, they want. So that metal detector is helping me stay in focus. I think I'm understanding better now what you've been what I was reading on your website that I wasn't quite understanding the way that I'm understanding it now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's it, because you talk about the traveling and it's a great example. You might say, like, I really want to make sure I go to France and Japan before I die. I really want to. But right now I have many kids who still rely on me. And I have a job that only gives me X amount of days of vacation a year. And I have this dream you're working on, right? This new project. And that takes so much extra time. So I'm going to keep that in the background saying, well, these are important. I have to make sure whether it's going to these places specifically that was important or the idea of traveling. But if part of it was just the idea of traveling, then let me start traveling where I can. Let's say you look at that dream, however, and you're like, no, it's not just traveling. It's specifically traveling to France and Japan.
Okay.
Right? You look at the need and you're like, no, it's very, very, very specific. Then you can still start pursuing the dream. It becomes this, like, the planning process, right? Yeah. We know now that planning for something is more satisfying often than achieving it. So it becomes this, what are the things I need to do today that are going to get me to this place where I can buy my ticket and take my 10 days in France? Because if you're going to go all the way, might as well, make it worth it. And that might be learning the language, starting to put some money aside, figuring out where I'd go. And all of that is part of fulfilling that real world expression of the dream.
Yes.
Knowing that you're still headed towards a dream.
Yes. And I would add, if I may, that the actual taking the actions as though you are going there or doing it actually lines things up for it to happen. Like, it's incredible.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. You actually have to take that first step to open up the doors that will then open up after each other, each step of the way. But if you don't take that first step to the first door, then you can't move forward. You got to take that step to declare your intention.
You have to set a purpose. Absolutely. I'm going to turn on some light because as the sun is starting to set, we'll get a little bit more lighting. The other thing in terms of roadblocks that we were talking about before is being able to carve out time. So part of the reasons all of us get really trapped right now and into this mindset where we feel like we can't do what we want to do, or we feel I use the term overbooked and underwhelmed, right? We're overbooked. We fill our lives with so many things and we're constantly trying to cram more things because we feel underwhelmed by our day to day. And that creates this noise. Like it's the noise and activity and the amount of people we're around all the time and the things we do.
Mm.
And when you fill your life with noise, you leave no room, no space, no opportunity to check in and to start asking those really important questions and to start answering them. Because asking them, you've got them there. I mean, we've done it. You could write down the questions we talked about today. But in order to answer them, you have to kind of quiet your world a little bit. You talked about floating. But that's exactly it. You have to give yourself time to float, or I call it the art of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's that thing our great-grandparents and ancestors used to do when they sat around the campfire at night and didn't talk to each other. They just kind of stared into space or sat on their front porches and rocked back and forth. It's the thing we did even 20 years ago before the internet happened. When your TV used to turn off at midnight or so, you used to get gray. Any millennials who are watching this, you have no idea what we're talking about. But and when I was small, when I grew up, first of all, I grew up watching black and white TV. I owned a black and white TV when I was really small. But we had 4 channels and then 5 channels, and then at some point in time, the TV turned off.
I know.
Right? And
I know.
couldn't stay watching TV, and there were only cartoons certain hours of the day. So there's no way you spent all the Saturday or Sunday or Tuesday watching cartoons.
Binge watching.
And so there was a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Right. And even as an adult, there was a lot of downtime, and there wasn't the pressure we feel now to be busy, and there wasn't the guilt that we feel now when we are not busy.
That's so weird, eh? Yeah.
Sorry. And so it's a huge roadblock to satisfaction and happiness and wellness right now is our inability to just slow down and be. So that is a massive roadblock. And if you are somebody who gets really stressed out at the idea of not doing anything, if you're the kind of person who's constantly telling other people you're busy and you have no time, if you tell yourself, I don't have time to do this, something that would take 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, then you need to look at that and be really alarmed by it, because that will, as a situational factor, is going to stand in the way of you living a life that is truly, truly fulfilling. That is the thing you will look back on in later years and go, why did I spend so much time telling myself this, when the reality is I had plenty of time. It was just a choice of how I spent my time.
Did you have a final message, because we did talk about a lot of things, and there's a lot to absorb, and if people only remember one thing, what is that one thing you'd like them to walk away from?
Can I make it a long one? No.
Yes. Yeah.
I was trying to think about it earlier today, and I was like, how can I put these 3 things in one sentence?
So this is a 3-part one.
Here's it goes. Don't stop dreaming, because there is absolutely a way for you to live and achieve your dreams as an adult. However, in order to get there, you have to create the time and the space to check in with yourself, to slow down, and to answer this one really important question, which is, what do I need to feel fulfilled?
Wow. That's awesome.
Good. I'm glad I got it all in one. But those are the big ones. Don't stop dreaming and slow down. Yeah. If you can continue dreaming and you slow down, you will find a way of, in the real world, given your limitations, given all the natural roadblocks that exist, like starting to carve out room for that real world expression of your dream.
Okay. So keep dreaming, slow down, listen to yourself.
And then you're going to create the time and the space to kind of practically figure out a way to apply that dreaming. Like
little baby steps.
It's not foolish, and it's certainly not irresponsible. I'm a ridiculously responsible individual, and I still totally believe in pursuing the dream. I just can't approach it in a foolhardy manner. I think a lot of people can't. But that doesn't mean that the dream isn't possible.
I think we're similar this way. We need frameworks and structures, but we'll get there. Mm-hmm. Mark my words, we'll get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said that you have a gift that you wanted to share with the listeners today.
Sure. So the gift I'm sharing is it's a 7-day email series called The Art of Nothing. And it's about taking 7 days, 2 minutes at a time, to learn how to slow down and check in. And this is something I do with everybody I work with, patients and coaching clients, to help them manage stress, but also to create those opportunities to ask yourself the important questions, to answer them, and to stop feeling so overbooked and underwhelmed. So it should be, I'm assuming, on the site, but the Art of Nothing Challenge.
Yes, and we'll have that the Art of Nothing on your website, and I'll also have that information on the page that will feature your recording.
Thank you for letting me talk about this stuff. As you can see, it actually, like, I get kind of giddy because I love this. This is part of me living. This is part of the real world expression of my dream. I love talking about this stuff.
Yes, and it showed. Yes, the big smile, your eyes are sparkling, and I really appreciated there was, you could tell that there was a lot of thinking through this of what it is, how to do it in very real, practical terms. And that's what this series is about giving people real, practical strategies so that they can start now. So I really appreciate you already having that focus and then bringing it to the table today. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad I could help. Really glad.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone for listening to Dr. Alessandra Wall today, sharing her passion and her desire to help you live a life that is fulfilling. And please do come back and listen to other interviews. We are looking at different aspects of how to overcome adversity, being happy, living the life of your dreams. So there's a lot more useful ideas and practical applications that you can do in your life that you can draw on from the wealth of experience in the interviews for this series. So thank you everyone for coming, and see you soon. Thanks again, Dr. Wall.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.